One of our holiday traditions is to have sausage balls. I don't know if it's a thing about the South, but sausage balls are just always on the buffet table or the appetizers or holiday parties. And I thought I would try to make sausage balls low carb. So the thing about sausage balls, they're pretty much sausage and cheese and flour. And so flour is absolutely no-no on this way of eating. So I decided to use as a binder pork rinds. This is 1/2 cup of pork rinds, and it's just pork rind dust. Use whatever. What we do is when they go stale, and I have a video about pork rinds, but when they go stale, I put them in my Ninja and just pulverize them into crumbs, and they make great breadcrumbs. I even use them in my pancake recipe. But I have pork rinds, and I'm also using oat fiber, and that's a 1/2 cup. So it's a 1/2 cup each, oat fiber, and a 1/2 cup of pork rinds, and use whatever pork rinds you like. I tend to use just the plain, they come in different flavors. I tend to use the plain just because MSG is often in the flavored ones, although every now and then I will indulge in some salt and vinegar ones because those are my favorite, but really I probably shouldn't. And then cheese, and what I've done is I've grated 8 ounces, this looks like a lot of cheese. I've grated 8 ounces of a very sharp cheddar. So I had an 8-ounce block and I simply grated it. I'm going to incorporate it a little bit at a time, simply using my hands. It's the best way to get this mixed together. And I'll tell you a story about myself. I had never made sausage balls. And as much as I cook, that sounds kind of strange, but I had not made them until my husband and I were married. And I had family coming up, and we were doing Christmas at my house, and so I decided I would make the sausage balls. And I didn't follow a recipe. I just knew it was flour and sausage. And so they didn't turn out quite right. So I called my mother-in-law, who makes really good sausage balls, by the way. I called and said, I don't know what I did wrong, but these sausage balls are dry. I don't know what I did. What do you put in your sausage balls? This is before Pinterest, and probably this was 7 or 8 years ago, but it was well before Pinterest. So I couldn't just look it up. And she said, what do you mean what I put in my sausage balls? I put sausage and flour and cheese. Well, that's exactly what I had put. And so we kept talking, and I made the comment about when I cooked the sausage. And she said, you cooked the sausage? Apparently, when you make sausage balls, you don't cook the sausage ahead of time, but I cooked it and probably drained the fat. And so my husband loves to tell that story because I have a reputation as a pretty decent cook, but I have done some really silly things like that before. Okay, this is really, really super thick, and so I'm just trying to incorporate it and a little bit at a time. And once you get it mixed, you're going to roll it into balls. Now let me say a little bit as I'm mixing, a little bit about the pork. Oftentimes I will use ground pork and make my own sausage. You can add to it onion powder, garlic powder, things like that, or sage, your traditional kind of pork seasonings. Or you can use sausage. If you find a sausage that's relatively safe, that doesn't have sugar or fillers in it, just use that. And that's what I'm doing. We have an all-natural sausage that I find locally that I really love. And so I'm just using a pound of that. So I've used a pound of sausage. I've thought about putting some dried onions in. I'm not going to do that. But I put a pound of sausage. I've put 8 ounces of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. Use whatever you like. I actually thought about using a jalapeno cheese because my husband really likes that. Don't cook your sausage ahead of time. I've used a 1/2 cup of pork rinds and a 1/2 cup of oat fiber. Now you could reduce that. What's going to happen is the oat fiber and the pork rinds are going to absorb the fat from the sausage as it bakes, and it's going to be really, really yummy. Okay. So you can see that's mixed up relatively well. The cheese got clumpy. Oops. The cheese got clumpy on me, and I got messy there. But anyway, okay, so now once you get it mixed pretty well, you're just going to roll it into balls. And I'm going to bake it at 350. I'm going to bake it at 350. I'm going to start checking it. It will cook, depending on the size of the balls that you make, it will cook relatively quickly. I don't make them terribly big, maybe an inch or so in diameter. And they'll bake, I'll probably check them after 7 minutes. I like to check foods in odd numbered minutes. I check them in 7 minutes, 9 minutes, because things happen, weird things happen in those odd minutes. It doesn't happen at 6 minutes and 4 minutes and 8 minutes, but at 7 and 9 minutes, the magic happens. So anyway, I'm just gonna roll these into balls. And it may take a while. I've already told you my story about sausage balls, and just make whatever, like I said, is favorite to you. I could put different spices in here. Like I said, I thought about adding a little more garlic, and you could certainly do that. What you're gonna do is use whatever your favorite recipe is. Just substitute pork rinds for the flour and oat fiber if you have it on hand. Now, if you don't have oat fiber, and some people don't, if you've made my biscuit recipe, you probably have oat fiber on hand. If you don't have oat fiber on hand, just use all pork rinds. It won't be quite as dried out, but it should still work pretty well for you. The other thing I want to show you or comment on is I'm using parchment paper. Now, before I went low carb, high fat, I don't think I ever had parchment paper in my house. It was something that I thought was kind of fancy and not something I would use. Now that I have it, I use it for nearly everything. Okay, now I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to finish making the sausage balls. They smell pretty yummy. I'm going to put these guys in the oven. We'll see how long it takes to make them for real. And then we'll see what they taste like. Okay, so we've taken the sausage balls out of the oven and we let them cool. And I had 30 sausage balls, and I don't have 30 anymore. They disappeared. But my family's telling me the main flavor is sausage and cheese. You don't have that flour biscuity kind of flavor that you would expect with traditional sausage balls. So the predominant flavors are the sausage and the cheese. And I used a very sharp cheddar, so maybe that's part of it because they don't care for sharp cheddar. I actually think, and they agree, the texture is really good because of the oat fiber, but it doesn't have that floury biscuit kind of taste. So they're low carb sausage balls. For a low carb sausage ball, I think it's really good. Don't expect it to taste like the traditional one, but it's a great option to put on your holiday table.